Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
That means that I should probably learn how to use this microphone. This might make some good content. I don't know what you want to talk about, but I lost a $7,000 job last week.
Okay, let's talk about this. Like what do you mean lost? Like was it scheduled and they canceled, or
Yep.
you just did? Oh wow. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So a comedy of errors, but the sort of so it was an attic re-insulation. So a different company had already removed the insulation,
Okay.
and then they had like ghosted him on the install.
Hmm.
So he had paid like a deposit for them. So he just kind of cut his losses there, and decided to go with us. And so quoted him out for the job. Big, beautiful home in an expensive part of town, and a very like hyper type A, the type of person who bought like a $300 thermal imaging camera and was going around his house thermal imaging everything.
God.
That kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so he was like getting really into like energy efficiency and like air sealing, making everything airtight and stuff, which is like, we haven't even jumped into that at all. Right.
Right.
We remove insulation, we replace insulation, pretty cut and dry. Right.
Yeah.
And so he was like, hey, can you guys air seal attics? I said, that's not something we typically do. But I'm happy to I'll send a couple guys out. We can foam up like the areas where the wires are coming up, areas where pipes are coming through your ceiling, and just make sure that's good.
Yeah. So when you say air seal, that's sealing out the air from the attic intruding into the interior of the home, or is it air into the attic? Because isn't there supposed to be like airflow ventilation above the insulation below the roof, like in the crawl
so
space?
you want the vents, either your soffit vents, and your roof vents up top.
So it sucks up from the soffit and shoots out the ridge vent or the roof vents.
But you want everything else. So that's just kind of to prevent mold growth.
Sure.
You want everything else as much as possible to not have any air gaps, because then you're going to be getting hot air coming or cold air, coming from your home interior and escaping, right?
Sure.
And so the first crazy thing was just I didn't get clear on his and my expectations on what that looked like.
Okay.
And so, I mean, and I was straight up with him. But about, hey, we don't normally do this, but I'm happy. I'll send a couple guys out and do this for you. And so they get there, and he's like, and like what he and I had talked about on the phone was like, we'll spray foam some wires and pipes. It's like basically where the wires are coming up through your 2x4s, we'll spray foam those holes and any gaps around pipes or HVAC or whatever coming up through your. And so they get there, and he's like, oh yeah, and he starts tacking, stuff on, and so he's like, yeah, well, can you also seal up these other just like gaps around like the exterior of the structure itself, not like going in interior. And they're like, sure, they're already there, they've already got foam guns out. Sure. So they start doing that. And so I get a call from the guy a couple days after the fact, and he's like, I'm completely dissatisfied with the work you guys did. And so I was like, hey, let me go out there and I'll get another set of eyes on it. And so I go out, and I was the one that quoted out the project, so I recognized his attic. But he had he had been building like a raised kind of storage structure up there. So it was just a mess. I mean, it was so just absolute chaos up there. New construction, there's plywood everywhere, and there's 2x4s, and there's tools, because he's got a handyman working up there. And so he starts going through, and he's like, see, they missed this and they missed this. And a lot of them are just those random exterior cracks that like he and I had never had a conversation about.
Yeah.
And then, but some of them were like interior pipes and wires where the guys just actually missed it, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then he was like, and I expected you to. He wanted like the interior top plates of all the interior walls to be foamed, where like the sheetrock hits the.
Oh my gosh.
So it was bad on me for not clarifying, what needed to be done.
Wow.
And so at that, so I said, hey, I'm happy to I'll get this knocked out, and we can, install. And he was like, no, I wouldn't trust anything your company did at this point. And so he backed out. And I don't have anybody pay deposits for me right now.
Yeah.
And so it's about a $7,000 job. I had already purchased $2,000 of insulation for it, which I'll be able to blow in, but it's just sitting there right now.
Right.
It was pretty depressing last week.
Wow. It's not, it sucks, but it sounds like you probably dodged a bullet.
I have thought that multiple times since then.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably not a guy you want.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. And he was, the customers that you feel like you kind of have to hold their hand through the whole process.
Yeah.
He was kind of, he's kind of one of those. It's still, I'm like, I feel like if we did air sealing, right? And so if we were experienced at that, I think that we totally could have still done that job, sold it as is, done the air sealing, and everybody would have been happy.
Right.
I mean,
Wow.
I would cross my fingers.
This is funny because it brings up something that has become a rule for me, is that every time we take on something we don't normally do, that's not like right in our wheelhouse, it always is a struggle or goes bad.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we've been like, you get like sort of goaded or walked into doing something for a customer that you're like, I don't do that. But then they kind of weasel their way into, okay, fine, whatever. And some of them are jobs, some of them are just like extra things.
Yeah.
Always it goes wrong. And you can tell people till you're blue in the face, like, we don't do this service. This isn't something we do. And then they call you back, well, I'm not happy with how you did this. They're like, good, because I don't do that. Like, I'm trying to do it as a favor for you. Oh my God.
Right.
So
That's right.
We've gotten a lot more strict about that and stringent. And like, I'll get a call during the day and it'll be, hey, this customer has this thing, they want us to do such and such. And all I do is go, is that something we do? And it's like, no.
No.
Okay, then no. Then we're going to refer that to, we're going to help them find somebody that does do that. And
then you have a sheet. What we do.
Yes. Well, it's funny. We actually did start doing that. So we have now, we just finalized it. I should send you a copy. And it basically is a chart. And it's not like service by service, but it's for our commercial pest management programs. What is our responsibilities and what is the site's responsibilities?
That's a great idea.
What we're going to do and what you're going to do. And so it very clearly outlines like the parameters of what our people are going to do. So for things with what we're doing, we don't end up doing a lot of exclusion. And people are going to lose their mind because, oh my God, you don't do exclusion. No. We want exclusion done. We're just not the ones that do it.
Right.
Our technicians on these commercial accounts are to go out there and do thorough inspections, take pictures, document the conditions, and report that to the facilities management, who then is responsible for fixing those problems.
Right.
And the trouble we ran into, and this was from a lesson way back, is we would run into a lot of like commercial buildings that were brick and stuff, and they would need to be repointed, which is like repairing the mortar in between the brickwork. Right. And so the pointing goes bad, and where we are with the snow and the salt and everything, it just dissolves, and then there's a hole between every single brick.
Right.
And mice just run in there. So one property manager was like struggling. We were getting mice come in. We're like, you gotta repoint your building, and it's like $5,000, right, to do that.
Right.
Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it. They're like, will you do it? Will you do it? Will you do it? And I'm like, no. Finally, we're like, okay, we'll do something. So we got excluder mesh, and we're stuffing it in the thing, and we use some foam we use the polyurethane foam to sort of glue it in place so it can't get pushed out and things like that. it's temporary. It's not, and we told him this is a temporary thing. It's not supposed to be whatever. We use the fire stop foam, so it's like orange. And he comes back to us, of course, as soon as we do the whole thing. I'm so unhappy with this, blah, blah. It looks terrible. And, there you can see this orange foam here and there and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I told you we don't do this. You need it. Yes, it doesn't look like you had a mason point your building for $5,000. It looks like you had some sucker that you conned into just stuffing crap into holes and filling it, who had told you do this yourself, like do this professionally. This isn't for us. But that's the kind of thing. So it like covers, like, we don't do exclusion. We don't do, the sanitation things. We're gonna recommend. We're not cleaning your drains, and we're not doing, being your housekeeping staff. We're too expensive to pay to do housekeeping. You have housekeepers that can do that, that kind of thing. But it really outlines and sort of keeps us, like, gives us a more clear idea in our minds of what's our wheelhouse and what is not.
Yeah.
And so we'll send this, we put this in the program binder for new accounts, and we'll send it to people. And, it's a pretty simple document. And it's funny, as you go down the list, there's like exclusion, sanitation, monitoring, and then pesticide applications, control things. And as you go down the list, what we do gets bigger and what they do gets smaller until you get to the final one, pesticide applications. On ours, it has, we're going to choose appropriate materials, and, when assessment-based treatments, when a treatment's necessary, blah, 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 whatever. And on their side, it says no pesticide applications, no unlicensed person to make any application, don't do anything.
That's right.
But it's funny because when you're at the top with exclusion and sanitation, it's really big on their side. It's like, you got to do all this
everything.
stuff.
Yeah.
And we're just consulting and reporting and inspecting. And then when you get to monitoring, it starts to shift, and then it's kind of even and whatever. But I'll send that to you because it might be helpful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that principle. And I think what that helps is just being very clear on expectations, which is really where I dropped the ball on this. Because I just didn't have, first off, it was like verbal, right? We literally talked on the phone about it.
Do you have service agreements? Like, how do you write this up?
All that is done. It's sort of a service agreement. It's in a quote. So, it's all specified of, the work that's to be done. So really what I should have done is basically adjusted the quote, said, oh yeah, we can do air sealing for an additional blah, blah, blah. And this is what it entails. Sign here,
Right.
Yeah.
But even then, it doesn't sound like your guys aren't like doing that every day. They're not trained on that. They're not sure what they're looking for exactly. It's
in his and my initial conversation, it was like a completely different conversation than when I went out to that inspection and he told me what he was expecting. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a mess. So, very good learning experience. But also made me realize, like, okay, I think the air sealing would actually be a really cool thing to add into that. But we're not gonna probably do that anymore until we jump full into it.
Right. Well, and that's a tough one, because sometimes when a customer will say one thing and you say the same thing, what you're saying and what you're envisioning could be miles apart from each other. So I have taken to asking people a lot of times, what does that look like to you? When they ask like a weird thing, like, can you describe to me what that would look like to you? And then at that point, the guy might be like, yeah, I expect you to seal this, 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 and this, and all these runs, and this run, and over here, and over, and you're like, whoa. This is a lot.
We don't do that.
This is a lot bigger than like, hey, can you fill in a couple of the convenient, pipe chases and electrical run holes and whatever?
Yeah, I had early on, we got contracted with a huge government building. I think it was like an FBI building.
Oh yeah.
They're probably watching this now. And
you're on a list.
And they had some mouse issues. And the property owner, because the FBI was leasing it from a private owner, and the property owner was getting a bunch of construction done. They had found mouse droppings, and it was holding up the construction because the workers were unwilling to go up there if there was mouse droppings.
Of course.
Yeah, which was a big mess.
Yeah.
So he calls me out, and he's freaking out because their like massive project is getting delayed over mouse poop. And so he wants me to go. It was like a 7 or 8,000 square foot commercial building, office space with drop ceiling, which is where they were. And he wanted me to go and vacuum all of the mouse droppings from 7,000 square feet of drop ceiling.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I can't even describe to you how long this is going to take me. Like
every tile, you got to
like,
move every tile,
or at least every
third
floor,
tile.
right?
Yeah,
you can kind of get, but
Right.
but I'm like, I'm gonna have to. There's like 60 rooms in this office. Like this is gonna take me. And so the quote I sent him was astronomical.
Mhm.
And he this does have a point, it ties in.
Okay.
And he says, you know, there's no way I'm paying you that. Can't you just go through and like spot clean? And like, again, you want me to spot clean 7,000 square feet of like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to do that? So what we agreed is I said, I will give you 15 hours of labor doing sanitation work, and I'll clean up the areas that I believe are the worst.
Okay.
And I'll clock there for 15 hours for you,
Mhm.
and we'll pay, you know, I'll charge you $150 an hour. And that was fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just wanting to keep it really vague. Can't you
Yeah.
just spot, you know? Like,
Yeah. Wow. So now this attic guy, something occurs to me though with him. He had already canceled somebody else. So like right there's like an alarm bell, right?
mhm,
Of
mhm.
like, okay, what went on
Yep.
with the other guy? Like I always get nervous when I get a customer that's like, well, I had 3 other companies in here. I had, you know, I just fired these guys and they're jokers. And you're like, okay, well, sometimes they're jokers, but also sometimes they're not, and it's the
Like doing
customer
a
that's
fine
the
job. Yeah,
problem.
that's right. Yeah. And that totally occurred to me more afterwards than before.
Afterwards.
But
Yeah.
but how he framed it was, he said he signed up, paid the deposit, they did the removal, and then ghosted him and never called him about the install. That's how he framed it to me. Whether
Yeah.
that's actually the case, I don't know.
He probably stood there during the whole removal and complained about every single step of it. And he was here like, you missed this spot and that
Oh,
thing.
you're amazing.
That's probably what happened. Those guys were like, forget this guy. Do never call him back. He can keep his deposit. We're never going back there.
Yeah, well, and just, I mean, I think you're totally right, man. And how I got out there and met the guy was that he had a pest control company come in to do some ceiling work in the attic, and he called me out to double check that guy's work.
Oh my God. Oh boy. Yeah.
Which, again, you know, now you look at hindsight's 2020 and all those things. I'm like, oh yeah, alarm bells should have been going off. But
So you were the third different company up in that attic doing something.
yes, we had a removal company, a pest control exclusion company, and then I did just start off doing an inspection for him.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then he reached out to me probably 3 months later and said, hey, you know, because I got measurements and stuff for a quote. And he said, hey, the other company ghosted me. You know, can you quote me out for that install?
Wow. Oh.
And then he ghosted me. So
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Yep. That's a tough one.
yeah,
There we
you know,
go.
it's funny. It's even just hearing you talk, like, you've obviously had a lot more experience in the industry. So I think you see those red flags
Sure.
more quickly. And yeah, it's because even now, just when I first jumped on this podcast with you, like I wasn't seeing it in that same light until you kind of
Oh wow.
illuminated that. So
Yeah, you start to, once you get burned a couple times, you start to build that intuition. You know, like you're like, wait, I've seen this story before. I've seen
Yeah.
this one. I know how
Yeah.
this one ends. This is not going to be good. And you start to, yeah, you can head things off a little bit. So your not service agreement, but your proposals, how specific are they? Do you like really outline like we're going to do this much work and this, you know?
Yeah.
what it's going to look like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty darn detailed.
Yeah.
It obviously the proposal didn't say anything about, air sealing. Um, and
So
he
that
signed
was
that
that
stuff.
was verbal. That was like an addendum that was a verbal addendum and never got
Yeah.
put into it.
And it
Yeah.
was after the fact, it was well
Oh.
after the fact where he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm getting
Mhm.
really into the energy efficiency stuff. Do you guys do air sealing?" No, we
Yeah.
don't do air sealing, but I'm happy to send a couple guys out there
Right. Right.
and on and on. So,
Yeah. So we started even with customers where we have like ongoing services. If they want something extra out of the ordinary or request some sort of thing, we'll do a supplemental quote or service
yep,
agreement or whatever and write it up. We've seen too many times where their expectations and our expectations don't align, and then you're in an argument. And so,
yeah,
like, even if we have ongoing service, and they're like, "Hey, you don't normally do this. Can you do this other thing?" Like, let's say, I don't know, one of the most common might be like box elder bug or cluster fly,
hmm
pre-treatments in the fall. So we'll have a maintenance account that we do at that service site, and then it's say an office building, and they want box elder bugs treated. We'll
yep,
make a second service agreement just for that thing, as opposed to saying, yeah, no, sure, we'll do it, and we'll just tack on or whatever on the bill.
right.
We have a specific one because it's a lot easier to go back to, oh, well, what was agreed to, like what did we put in writing.
Yeah, that's great. We don't. It's funny. For most of our normal services, I don't use service agreements at all.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
but I see the merit in that a lot, and I'm thinking even about a couple recent interactions that I've had with some customers because we switched our pricing model to like initial, and then they're also paying for follow-up visits
Mm,
as opposed to like a
yep.
larger flat rate initial, right?
Yep.
And I've had a few customers over the last 6 months, just a handful, that have been like, "Oh, well, I didn't. You never told me, that there was going to be that I was going to have to get billed for follow-up visits." Like, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, service agreement would definitely cover that.
Yeah. We never really used a lot when we did more residential stuff. Like for our residential customers, we never really had too many like official service agreements. But I could see where if you get into doing home repair type things or things that the bill is in the $1,000 or more, let's say,
Yep.
I think you should probably put everything in writing at that point.
Yeah.
Because like doing a $100, $200, $300, service for something, a one-time service at somebody's home, you probably can do that verbally. You can probably come to terms and go, "Yep, we're going to take care of that wasp nest, and it'll be $200 or whatever it is." But if it's like, okay, it's going to be $1,800 to do this exclusion job, and there might be follow-ups or maintenance or some sort of warranty involved with it. I mean, it seems like maybe unnecessarily formal. Um, but
No, yeah.
I
I
think it protects
yeah,
everybody, and I think it could also you'll look that much more professional,
yeah.
right? Like it looks like they're buying something with some value, and yep, here's all the details and yada yada. So
Yeah, and for all like that attic job, that all that stuff is written out, on kind of a formal proposal and
right,
quote.
right,
But yeah, I'm almost like, I don't know. I'm tempted to I'm tempted to just start doing something particularly for the rodent side, where you're getting
yeah, yeah,
not uncommon to have 3, 4, 5, follow-up visits if it's a crazy account out there.
right,
So
right. Wow, wow. Yeah, we've had we've had that really save our biscuits in the past from time to time because yeah, people will expect a lot of things, and especially when we get into like nursing homes and apartment complexes, they're like, well, what's included, what's not included, or you show up to do an apartment complex where maybe your service program is common spaces and exterior stations and whatever.
mhm,
And then they're like, "Oh, well, we got 7 rooms, 7 units for you to go into. One,
right.
one saw an ant here, and Mrs. Smith saw a fly there, and this, has an unidentified bug there, and oh, this one has fleas." And they think that for the, $200 a month, it's going to cover, unlimited treatments within every single unit. And so, like having things like that specified in that a service agreement, like, okay, it includes whatever, general insect and rodent control and up to 3 units per visit or something like that.
Yep.
And then what is it going to be for each additional unit?
Yeah.
What's the additional cost? Are blood feeders included, or are they going to be extra? If you get fleas, if you get bed bugs, how does that work? What's it cost? What's going to happen? If you have to do a whole building treatment, how is that handled? So if you have 12 unit, each building's, let's say 12 or 16 units, and they want the whole building treated for bed bugs or roaches or who knows what, how are you going to do that? Is it at the unit by unit price, or is it going to be a new quote, or is it going to be hourly, rate? So like, I think setting the terms, the rules of the roads for all these things is super valuable to let it run smoothly, in the future.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally. Yep, 100%.
wow.
But otherwise, on my side, been a decent week after I got past that. And the cool thing is, and I'm so thankful, we're super busy. So I lost that job on Thursday morning, and it was literally like by Friday afternoon, we had both those days completely filled with new work. So
Oh, wow.
it ended up being just fine.
So you didn't lose out, except for you are stockpiled with extra insulation.
I just have a lot of insulation. Yeah.
So if anyone in Portland's listening, there's a special on an attic insulation at Pest Patrol right now.
Yep, we're running. Yeah, so all my attic quotes right now are all discounted a bit, so I can just push that out.
There you go. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
That's funny.
You've been listening to Coast with Andy, can't pronounce his last name, and Gabe Seymour. Join me, Pete Chopin, probably in another 5 years from now when they invite me on again.